She spent her career teaching people how to control their anger, how to pause, how to breathe, how not to let emotions spiral out of control. But in the end, anger would consume her own life. This is the story of Latoshia Daniels, an anger management counselor, a secret affair, and a confrontation that ended in murder. Latoshia Daniels was in her late 30s, living in Little Rock, Arkansas. On paper, her life looked stable. She worked as a social worker. She counseled others on emotional regulation. She was respected in her professional circle. But behind closed doors, her personal life was unraveling. Her marriage was failing. She felt emotionally disconnected, unseen, and deeply unhappy. In 2017, looking for guidance, Latoshia turned to someone she trusted through her church, a pastor named Browse. Their first meeting was meant to be counseling, a safe space, a conversation about healing. Latoshia opened up about her marriage, her loneliness, her need for emotional connection. And the pastor listened. He said the right things. He made her feel understood. He made her feel chosen. Soon, she scheduled a second session. But this time, the boundaries disappeared. What began as counseling crossed a line. The pastor and Latoshia became physically involved. And in that moment, everything changed. The relationship gave Latoshia what she felt she'd been missing: attention, validation, intimacy. But there was a problem. They were both married, so the relationship had to remain hidden. As time went on, the affair became more complicated and more disturbing. The pastor insisted on strict secrecy. They communicated using disappearing messages. They traveled together, but Latoshia paid her own way to avoid raising suspicion. He set rules. He controlled how she behaved, how she spoke to him, even how she presented herself in private. He demanded obedience. And slowly, Latoshia became emotionally dependent. Despite the warning signs, she was deeply in love. She bought him expensive gifts. She rearranged her life around him. She believed the relationship meant more than it actually did. The pastor told her something that kept her hopeful. He claimed his wife knew about the affair. He framed it as ethical non-monogamy. That was a lie. His wife, Tabitha, knew nothing. While Latoshia moved forward with divorce, the pastor stayed married. He kept his life intact, while Latoshia risked everything. In 2018, the pastor accepted a new position at a church in Tennessee. He and his wife relocated. The distance made the relationship harder, but it didn't end it. They continued secretly. Messages, trips, hotel meetings. Until something changed. In 2019, the pastor began pulling away. He grew emotionally distant, cold, dismissive. When they met again in person, Latoshia sensed it immediately. This was no longer love. She was unraveling. At one point, overwhelmed and desperate to be seen, she brought a firearm to a hotel room, not to harm him, but as a cry for attention, a threat against herself. The pastor talked her down and took the weapon away. From that moment on, he saw her differently, not as a lover, but as a liability. Soon after, he ended the relationship, not with a conversation, not with closure, but with a disappearing message. Just like that, it was over. For Latoshia, it was devastating. She felt discarded, humiliated, used. She spiraled. She purchased another firearm and began driving, believing she was headed toward her own end. But along the way, she made a different decision. She wanted answers. She wanted a final conversation. She drove from Arkansas to Tennessee. Latoshia knew where the pastor often spent time, a cigar lounge. She found him there. They spoke briefly. What was said is still unclear, but at some point he suggested she come to his apartment. He implied that they could finally talk, possibly even confront his wife together. Latoshia followed. When she arrived, his wife Tabitha let her inside. The two women spoke casually. Tabitha believed Latoshia was in town for a conference. Then the pastor came home, and everything shifted. He acted distant, confused, as if he barely knew why Latoshia was there. There was no plan, no confession, no honesty. Latoshia realized the truth in real time. She had never been special. She had never been chosen. She had been hidden. As the tension grew, she decided to leave. She asked the pastor to walk her out. He refused. Instead, he told his wife to do it. That was the breaking point. In that moment, the years of secrecy, manipulation, and emotional control collapsed into rage. Latoshia pulled out the firearm. She accused him of breaking her heart. And then she fired. The pastor was shot multiple times. When his wife reacted, Latoshia fired again, injuring her. The pastor did not survive. Tabitha did. Afterward, Latoshia did not flee. She stayed in the apartment, overwhelmed by what she had done. When police arrived, she was arrested without resistance. At trial, the story of the affair, the lies and the manipulation came to light. The jury deliberated. And in the end, Latoshia Daniels was found guilty of second-degree murder. As of now, she has not yet been sentenced. This case is not a story of sudden violence. It is a story of boundaries crossed, power abused, and emotions left to fester in the dark. A reminder that secrecy does not protect anyone, and that unchecked control can turn intimacy into tragedy. Some crimes don't begin with violence. They begin with silence and whispered lies. This is Whispers of Crime.